We are live, everybody. Me and my scrape from shaving this morning. Fun times. I bought the more expensive razors, thinking that I wouldn't nick myself, and boy, was I wrong because I did. um, I know this probably isn't the best time to do a live stream, but at the same time, there's some things that I covered in my last video that talked about how the prosecution's going to try and create reasonable doubt here in the Delphi case. And I've had a lot of feedback and a lot of opinions from people on whether or not, this Odinism theory and the things going on like that are real, if they're even plausible. And I have some real issues with it, I have to be honest. And I'd like to talk with some of you today about why I have some issues with the whole Odinism theory in general. Not the least of which is the fact that these crimes occurred in broad daylight. And, I'm not sure that if you're going to commit a ritualistic crime with a large group of people, that plan is going to go, how are we going to do this? Let's see, one of you is going to lure these girls down this hill, and then we're going to take them across a creek to a site over there, and then we're going to ritualistically sacrifice them in broad daylight. That'd have to be the stupidest plan of all time. I mean, you think about it logically. Think about all the things that could go wrong in broad daylight. I mean, in the middle of a cold day, I mean, how many? I'm not by any means a ritualistic sacrifice expert, but based on the things I've studied about the Odinists, they'll sacrifice like small animals, things like that. And I repeated on my page, I've never found one single instance that I could find of a double ritualistic homicide of two teenage girls by an Odinistic cult. It just doesn't exist. So for the defense's theory to be true, this would have to be pretty unprecedented stuff. And I'd love to hear what everybody else here who's watching thinks about the whole Odinism theory, because again, is that the plan? If you were committing a crime like this, God forbid, that you would make up to do something like that in broad daylight? And I really can't get past the fact that, if you're going to commit a ritualistic crime or any crime of any kind, do you let people see you and walk past it? Just, there's so many things that don't make sense about this theory to me. And it's bothering me. And as some of you may have seen in my last video on my page, I exchanged emails, and she's actually emailed me some more since then. Dr. Catherine Ramsland, the forensic psychologist who's world-renowned from DeSales University, and I have been talking about this case and reasonable doubt and things like that. And in fact, I have a message here that she sent me recently that I haven't really discussed with anybody, but I was telling her that I have a lot of concerns that a double child killer may be let free if, in fact, Richard Allen is involved with this crime. So I'm not accusing him again. We're just discussing things based on the known facts, as always. And, I had a lot of questions for her. And, she's just basically told me that she didn't think that going forward with all the things that have been kind of let out of the bag here, that there's going to be as much information readily available as there has been lately leading up to the trial. And one of the things that I think really, really concerns me is I look at some of the Facebook pages where people discuss the Delphi case lately, and there's people on there alleging their true crime channels, other true crime channels, individuals have been speaking with, quote, family members, things like that. And again, I would strongly, strongly encourage anybody who's attempting to do that to stop, because what's to say the defense doesn't say, well, the family is, violated the gag order. This is, I mean, you don't want to put people who've already been through a victim of violent crime in that situation. So again, I'm sure that the family members have all kinds of thoughts on the recent document release. There's 160 pages. So again, if you're a channel out there doing that, trying to talk to family members, trying to talk to law enforcement officers who've been involved in this investigation in any way, just again, don't do it. That there's a gag order on a lot of people. There's not a gag order on people who are like media members like me. I don't know who all is still under that gag order, et cetera, but just don't do it. You know, there's really not a whole lot to gain from that at this point, except to upset a judge. And you don't want to have evidence or things getting thrown out of court. So what do you all think about this whole Odinism theory, or actually Odinist? There was actually somebody who, I think it's called Ashtaru, or I don't want to mispronounce it, that got really upset at me the other day on here on my page because I referred to it as Odinism, and I'm like, look, that's just the words they're using, that's just the term they're using, so that's what we're going by. I think that I actually have some notes here. Sorry if I'm kind of scatterbrained this morning. I've had a real busy morning. I was diagnosed with gallstones, and I've been wondering why I'd had stomach problems for years and years, and they kept telling me it was all in my head, blah, blah, blah. Well, lo and behold, I have gallstones. So now I got to figure out what they're going to do about that. I'm having a good day right now where it's not bothering me, thankfully. Anyway, back to the Richard Allen stuff. You know, one of the problems the prosecution might have here is, in addition to all the reasonable doubt that's being raised potentially, whether you believe it or not, is that we don't have a picture of Richard Allen's face at the crime scene. We have somebody who's matching the description in the way he was dressed. We have, eyewitnesses, one of which said he had a scarf or a covering over part of his face. And, one of the other things that Catherine Ramsland said to me was she hopes, in one of these recent emails, she hopes that whatever happens, whether Richard Allen is innocent or guilty, that he's found innocent or guilty based on facts and not people just pushing a narrative that leads to the conclusion that they want to see happen. Forgive me if the word for that escapes me here for a second, but it's one of those things to where, and it's a known scientific phenomenon, where if you're trying to, you have a theory, let's say, or a hypothesis, like say, I believe this happened. And it's actually, that's what it is. It's called confirmation bias. And Catherine Ramsland said, I just hope that there's not confirmation bias that leads to a verdict in this case, that it's actual evidence. And I completely agree with her that too many of us, and I even told her, hey, I'm guilty of it sometimes too, because I have a theory. Granted, my theory is based on all the studying I've done for years and years and years in this case. But sometimes you want to see your theory be right. And that's where like human ego comes in. And, none of us want to be wrong. None of us want to have a theory and say, well, that was a dumb theory. That sucked. No, just by nature as human beings, we want to help people. We want to solve this case. We want to help them solve this case. And in doing so, sometimes we get kind of tunnel vision thinking, okay, our theory is the right one. I'm onto something. And it's interesting how people react to these things in the digital era. That I've had countless people tell me, oh, Mike Patty's guilty, blah, blah, blah. He look into this guy and accusing family members and stuff. And I always have to respond to people. I'm like, well, look, dude, you can get mad at me all you want, but I've personally vetted information. And I know for a fact that Mike Patty is on camera at work during the time of the crimes. So it's like, unless you have some sort of evidence that he's involved in some bigger conspiracy, don't come on my page and tell me that crap, because I've been doing this for 27 years. And while I speculate a lot, all of the speculation I do, I try to stay as much away from confirmation bias as I can. And I would encourage everybody, I'm trying to keep an open mind here. I really am. And Dr. Ramsland said to me in an email, she said, what if he's innocent? And she's just, playing devil's advocate with me. And I'm like, indeed. And I went on to list off to her all the reasons I thought that was highly unlikely. And she said, she told me, she said, the unsolved, you have some really good points about why this seems pretty far fetched. She goes, but the problem is without having all of the information that the investigators have in front of them, you have no way of, knowing for sure. You may be right, but uh, they have more than we have. And one of the things, let me just say hi here for a second. Hello at Teresa. Thank you for stopping by to say hello. Good morning. Yeah, it's good morning here in the Midwest in the United States. I know I have a lot of people who watch in England, overseas, Australia, and I appreciate all of you. Thank you for that, whatever time it is in the time zone you're in now. The other thing, I want to discuss here about the whole Odinism theory and crime scene and stuff like that is, this scene was left unsecured overnight, and that wasn't intentional. I went back the last couple of nights and I really rewatched interviews they did with Mike, Patty, and the family talking about what happened that night when they started searching after 4 or 5 p.m. and how many people approximately were out there searching throughout the night, even when the sheriff's department called it off. So there was potential for people in the community, whether it's Richard Allen or somebody else, to go out there that night, be part of the search and just tamper with the crime scene. But, we don't know if that happened. We don't know what else they found at the crime scene. We don't know if they found other people's DNA at the crime scene, whether that was incidental, otherwise. But you would think anybody who wasn't involved that came upon that, whether it's daytime, nighttime, obviously would have told somebody right away. The other thing I hear a lot is people saying, well, how come they didn't, and this is a real tough one, how come they didn't spot the girls when they had drones out there searching the area? Now, number one, we don't know what time they supposedly launched those drones, if they did. All of the information I've heard stating that they use drones to search is secondhand information that I can't verify myself because there's a gag order. So, we don't know if there's one drone out there searching a huge area. We don't know. And the other thing, I really tried to study how quickly a body, when somebody's killed, how quickly it loses a core temperature and what kind of a heat signature that would give off, et cetera, et cetera. And there's an old saying that, something is only as good as the person using it. So if somebody who's operating this drone that day or that night is looking in another area or, sees a small heat signature, they might think it might be a small animal or something. It's not as easy as it looks, everybody. It's just not. Teresa says it definitely created reasonable doubt, though. It probably did in a lot of people's minds, but you have to keep in mind that that's the defense's job, and these people, that they do this for a living, whether it's their first capital murder case or not, or whatever the case may be, they have an obligation to their client. And I don't know how they do it because, in the United States, you have the legal right to a defense lawyer, whether you can afford it or not. And whether that's a good defense lawyer, bad defense lawyer, et cetera, it's neither here nor there. You have that right to legal representation. And if you don't do things properly in a procedural manner that's like by the book, any little tiny thing that you screw up can cause reasonable doubt. It can cause your entire case to get thrown out. So trust me when I say that the defense, it's their job to come out swinging. I mean, you saw it in the Casey Anthony case. Her attorney, Jose Baez, started blaming Casey Anthony's dad of sexual abuse and sexual assault and, all kinds of other things. And notice that when they wanted a court, there was never any proof of that. They didn't have her diary anywhere. They didn't have, specific details about what the abuse was. And so the thing that stands out to me is in this Odinism theory or Odinist theory, there's an awful lot of generalizations. And what really, really bothers me is that this was released for public consumption and it's got so many names in it. The defense did try to be more specific, but they did so in such a general way. They put people's names in there, Elvis Fields and this person, that person, but they didn't provide any definitive clue or proof at all to link those people to these crimes. None. Okay, I want everybody to keep that in mind. That even if the defense says, well, there's evidence of Odinism, and we think that something on somebody's Facebook page potentially matches what we saw at the crime scene, and then I go and I look at the guy's Facebook page, okay, and what I've seen depicted at the crime scene looks significantly different than some of those runes, okay, that they allege that are there on the top of the girls' bodies. And I know other channels and Sleuth Intuition and other people have stated, that it could have just been somebody that got rushed away that was trying to stack sticks up. And he was taking little, pieces of sticks and stuff and just throwing them down in random patterns. And it was amazing that you could see just how many different things that were formed by just randomly tossing sticks down that looked like it had some meaning or some pattern to it. And again, that goes back to the thing I was saying earlier in this live stream about confirmation bias. Okay. Believing something is real because you want to believe it, as opposed to whether or not it's the truth. And I had a real interesting thought the other day. Okay. And I asked myself, what if the ballistic evidence is the main evidence against Richard Allen? Like, let's just hypothesize that they didn't find anything useful at his house, and they have the ballistic evidence that everybody says is sketchy. The defense says, oh, that's, that science is subject to interpretation. And even in their filing, the prosecution says that it's subject to some form of interpretation. However, when I went on the ATF website, the FBI's website, and I studied this, I don't know how far they go back, but I think almost every weapon now, when they sell a weapon, they discharge a firearm from your weapon and do other things and keep it in a database with the ATF, so that if they ever need to match ballistics to a weapon, they have that database. And what I'm trying to do, and what I would like to do on my channel, is I would like to get somebody on my channel who does ballistics, who's involved with the ATF as a journalist, and talk to them and ask them, hey, when you're comparing the extraction marks, okay, on an unspent round, like in this case, like they're alleging that they've got the marks from, it was an unspent round. We don't know if he dechambered it, was threatening the girls, and it popped out. We don't know if it was, malfunction or something like that, and it pops out. How unique of a signature does that typically leave when it comes to the markings? And I asked myself this, okay, let's just say, this is all hypothetical. Let's say that only 1 out of every 140 caliber rounds that are ejected like that have matching signatures on it. Even in that case, if it was only like, 1 out of every 100 in their database match, and you got to remember, they're going to compare that to a database full of 40 calibers they have and probably tell you what the odds of that matching actually are. And even if it's just 1 out of every 50 weapons, let's say, that's only a 2% chance the gun could match somebody else's gun. Okay. Think about this logically. So not only do you have that, but that person who has that other separate weapon that would match your ballistics in that caliber would also have had to have been at that crime scene at that specific place and time, in addition to it matching Richard Allen's gun. Okay. And the odds of that are extremely unlikely. And I want everybody to understand that when you think about this logically, if those ballistics do match and they can say, hey, compared to X amount that we have in our database, this only matches like 5 other known weapons or 10 other known, and they're going to give you what the odds of that are. And those odds are going to be pretty slim that it would match anybody else's weapon. I'm telling you, this is what's going to happen. And when they do that, they're also going to probably mention, like I just said, for it to have been somebody else, in addition to those odds you'd have to overcome, that person that has that 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 10,000 that would match his ballistics also would have had to have been at the same crime scene that day, just by total coincidence in broad daylight in the middle of February. That is extremely unlikely, even if it's only, 1 in 10 that would match or 1 in 20. And so I want to find out from an ATF or ballistics expert how many other markings or extractor marks on the unspent round would potentially match somebody else's, even if it's a partially subjective science, because that evidence may wind up being more damning than you think, especially in light of what we may or may not find out was found during the search of his home and vehicle. Let me say up here. Let me look up here at some of the comments and catch up here now. Cecil Hotel says not innocent. Why not frame Ron Logan? No fight from him. It's one of those things where I'm not in the defense's head. I don't know why they chose this specific angle, but they did. That's a good question. Inky Pinky, hi, first time I've caught a live insomnia in Australia. Yeah, I was just telling people earlier on my live stream, I just got diagnosed with gallstones and the symptoms come and go, and I don't know what they're going to do with it yet, but I was misdiagnosed for years, so I feel good one day, feel crappy one day. So I know a little bit about insomnia lately. That's the reason I tell that story. I'm sorry to hear that you're going through that. My advice is, just as somebody who was a former athlete and things of that nature, if you just spend your day physically wearing yourself out, even housework, gardening, take a 3-mile walk, tire yourself out, your body will eventually just shut down and say, okay, I give up. And it's easier said than done, but that's one of the best things you can do. Teresa, thank you. She says, I know, I hope you get better. Yeah, I hope so too. What else do we have? Mike Esseri, good morning. I know Mike's on my page a lot. Thank you. I appreciate that. So Mark Craven says, didn't law enforcement find the bullet days after the girls were found and the crime scene examined? Pictures of the bullet where it was found, chain of custody. I want to be real careful about that because, in the amount of time I have to study this case, I've heard people say that the bullet was found days after. But if you can find that in any sort of affidavit, any sort of search warrant that shows that it wasn't immediately found, I would be really appreciative to see that. I try to be careful about stuff like that because right now, in my mind, that's a rumor that I haven't been able to confirm. Again, if you find otherwise, please show me because it makes my job easier trying to discuss and hypothesize in this case. My thought would be that pretty quickly, when you're examining a crime scene as an FBI agent, as the state police, they have metal detectors. They have things they'll spray with luminol, to see if there's blood spatter with the light they put over it. And I'm sure they did all that. But then again, this is a weird case. Maybe I'm wrong. I think anything metal or a bullet, even if it was hidden or they couldn't see it in plain sight there, would probably be discovered pretty quickly by, teams who have metal detectors and things out there like that of that nature at the crime scene. So it would surprise me if that wasn't if it took them very long to find that. I'm also, and this is something I really want to talk about too, the fact that the document, according to the defense, says that Libby's cell phone was found underneath her back. It doesn't say if, she had it tucked in her, it just, obviously if she had her clothing removed, it couldn't be tucked into anything. So that makes me wonder again, was he aware? And I'm trying to put myself in his mind space, which is almost impossible to do. Was he aware that she had a phone on her at the crime scene and just, with gloves on or something, tucked it back under there or, set her on top of the phone or something like that? Because again, I find it real hard to believe that if he knew he had been filmed by her, that he would have left that there. Why not, throw it in the water or smash it, do something. And that wasn't the case at all. So I find that really interesting that, the phone would be found under somebody's nude body. You'd almost have to certainly be aware at that point that phone existed. So I'm currently of the thinking that Bridge Guy probably was aware that she had a phone, and he probably just didn't take it with simply because he didn't know that she photographed him or filmed him, and that if she had, the photographic evidence, as we've seen, didn't show his face because it was either obscured because of poor video quality or covered up. And who knows what kind of panic set in at the crime scene after this happened. But just again, I want to reiterate that I'm having a real hard time buying the Odinist theory. I really am. It just, again, it doesn't make sense to me that some sort of a cult would conduct something ritualistic in broad daylight, let alone no eyewitnesses. I mean, we have the eyewitness describing a man in black, but nowhere in that defense filing are there names or anything stating that anybody witnessed any of these other alleged participants of this alleged ritual. And I want everybody to keep that in mind as well, that it's very, very generalized. Even though they name names, they want to try and get everybody hyped up. They want to get a potential jury pool, because all it takes is one person to say, hey, wow, maybe this was a ritualistic crime. Again, broad daylight, you're going to cross a 60-foot high bridge to go and commit that ritual act across a creek. There's so many things that could go wrong. The girls could be diverted one other direction. They could run. So everybody's going to have to meet up at the same spot, and nobody sees anybody else. Just think about that. It doesn't make any sense to me anyway. The other thing is, Shane Considine says crime scene for a first offender makes no sense. He took way too long if he was by himself. Well, a couple of thoughts on that. When I texted with Dr. Kathleen Ramsland, that was my initial intent in reaching out to her, actually, was I wanted to know from her perspective and her experience, being world-renowned as she is, what is, and this was my first question to her, and how I introduced myself. I said, what was, in your studies, the difference between, because she's interviewed BTK, Ted Bundy, you name it. What is the difference between a first crime scene and, say, a fourth or fifth crime scene? I asked her. And when she wrote me back, as some of you have seen, she just said, I can't answer that question for you because I don't deal in comparative analyses, even though I know she has opinions on what her studies tell her in general. But, I appreciate her not wanting to lead me and, lead my thoughts or theories. But it is interesting because that was kind of what I was getting at when I asked her. It seems like an awfully elaborate crime scene. And typically, from what I've studied, offenders tend to kind of escalate to that sort of thing and to graduate. But, when you said he took way too long at the crime scene, I mean, what is too long? We don't know what he's doing while he's there. And, he could just be freaking out because it could have been a sexual assault gone wrong. He may not have initially even intended on killing the girls. He may have been like, okay, I'm going to rape them or something. God forbid. Sorry, I'm being so graphic. I'm going to tie them up. Who knows, something sadistic. And if any of that plan goes sideways, there goes your ritual theory. Maybe then by that point, somebody fights back, his mask comes down. Maybe somebody even realizes, oh my gosh, that's Richard Allen, or that's some other person who isn't Richard Allen. So, when you say spend a lot of time at the crime scene, if he hadn't intended on killing them that day, but that's what happened because he was identifiable or because, he could have gotten in trouble, he could have just been kind of even sitting at the crime scene for a while afterwards, panicking. What the hell do I do now? How do I cover this up? And he could be sitting there for 10 minutes. He could be smoking a cigarette, freaking out. We don't know. So I want to, caution assuming things because of how long he was at the crime scene. There could be any number of reasons why somebody would spend that much time at a crime scene. Let's see what some of the things we have on here. Let's see. Margaret Lee said, what makes you say the person whose gun matches the ballistics had to be there that day? That's not a true statement, even if likely. I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. I'm saying if the ATF has a database, now listen carefully, if the ATF has a database that shows different extractor marks from unspent rounds that they keep, okay? And say only 1 out of every 100 of those match Richard Allen's gun and some other random gun. So that's only, you know, 1 in 100 chance of it matching his gun in the first place. But additionally, in addition to having to have somebody whose ballistics matches, that person would have had to have been at the crime scene that day, in addition to being the random, unlikely person whose ballistics from their 40 caliber were likely enough to match Richard Allen's. Make sense? Okay. And that to me seems very, very unlikely. And that's why I want to find out from somebody who is an ATF agent or somebody just how rare it is. And we're going to find out during trial, I'm sure, just how rare it is for 2 just random 40 caliber weapons to have identical extractor marks, or, you know, just on any given weapon that they would test. That's going to be important. It's going to be real important. What else do we have here? I hope that answers your question a little bit better. Margaret Lee Reed, John France. Another channel did a test to see how long it would take to arrange the branches. It took under 2 minutes. Yeah, there's in the middle of February, and you know, I live in the Midwest, probably about, you know, a couple hours from Delphi in Illinois, and I've been out to that area a few times and looked around the scene, get the lay of the land, so I knew better what I was talking about here. And that's just a massive forest there. I was walking through the woods the other day, and I was looking at just how many branches and sticks they're just everywhere that are dead branches, trees. And then I know we have everybody say, oh, well, it looked like one of the branches was cut with precision. Well, you know, maybe he kills them. Maybe there's a tree branch nearby. We know he's got a knife. We don't know if it's serrated. We don't know if it got multiple knives. Even a small tree branch, it would only take you, you know, 20, 30 seconds to maybe saw through one and cut it off and just use that. That's a possibility too. Looking at some other things. Yeah, John France, using sticks around the Maven 2017 says, I would like to know what evidence law enforcement has that Bridge Guy didn't just walk past the girls. How do they know he's the abductor, whoever he is? I think part of that probably has to do with the additional 40-something seconds of audio/video that's on Liberty German's phone that has been unreleased. If we ever saw the full video, we would probably just be spooked beyond belief at what we see and what we hear. I know Abby's mom has said there's not too much more on it, but I think that one of the girls says, oh, he has a gun. So at that point right there, if they have footage that's probably time-stamped, et cetera, that shows her filming Bridge Guy, and plus whatever audio video that they have that we don't know about, and then later in that same recording, you know, somebody says, oh, you have a gun. That's kidnapping right there. That's immediately, that's a person who has tried to abduct and kidnap those girls. And I'm sure that they know that that person was Bridge Guy. Otherwise, they wouldn't be putting that out there for public consumption. And when this goes to trial, believe you me, if there's more information on that audio and on that video she took, which there may be, there very well may be, keep in mind that's a possibility, that is going to be even more damning and show that Bridge Guy was that person. So it'll be interesting to see if we ever see that full video when it goes to trial. And I know Richard Allen wants his trial televised, but if that happens, boy, it's going to be a three-ring circus, the likes of the O.J. Simpson case, and the poor families having to go through that, whether Allen's innocent or guilty. I really feel for them. Some more questions here. I'm just trying to get one at a time. Shane Constantine. I mean, staging, dressing the girls, etc. Would a first offender not kill and run? We want to be real careful about that, okay? And like Catherine Ramsland has said in the BTK case, remember, he killed the Otero family, okay? And he did a form of staging himself in which, I don't want to be graphic, but he did something where he left the girl hanging in the basement. And from the best of my knowledge and his admission, that was his first crime. So he kind of posed and staged for shock value BTK did, and that was his first crime. And that's one reason, I made a video in the past, if you haven't seen this further back on my page, what can BTK teach us about Delphi? Being a parent to a daughter himself, somebody who was living in or near the town he was committing his crimes in, very similar to what Richard Allen is accused from. So that's another reason I wanted to pick Dr. Ramsland's brain about this, because she talks to somebody who has a lot of similarities to the perpetrator of this crime, big if it is in fact Richard Allen. Let's see, what else do we have up here? Let me go through these. John France says, Allen might have planned and thought out his fantasy for months. He could have visited and prepped for it. One thing that really sent chills up and down my spine, I was going back over the items that were taken from Richard Allen's home. Okay. And you can go look this up yourself. And one of the things was, I think it was like a cigar box or some sort of a box that he kept in, I don't know if it was a bedroom or somewhere he kept in his house that they found. And in it was a single bullet. Okay. I don't think it was a used round, but there was a single bullet in that box, and it creeped me out because it's like, wow, what if that's just a trophy he's keeping there from some crime or some other crime that only he knows about? And, his wife may see it. Oh, he's just got just a round sitting in a box, whatever, no big deal. But to him, he gets this ongoing thrill every time he sees that in his mind, which is paraphilia, that, wow, I know what the truth behind that bullet is. And it's pretty twisted stuff to think about. But, I hope that they're analyzing all the things they found at his house to make sure it doesn't match other crime scenes as well. So I'm fascinated when this goes to trial to really see what the search found, and if there's anything at all that they found in the search of his home or property that links him to that crime scene besides the ballistics and eyewitness stuff. Let's look at some more here. Mark Craven. But yeah, John France, I think if it was Allen, he probably had fantasies about all kinds of weird things like this for a long period of time. We've got some stories coming forward from people who allege to have worked with him that said he was a pretty creepy dude. So I don't know if that's true or not. That's just the story that's being told by other channels. Mark Craven, do you think Richard Allen was a lone wolf? No, I do not. And I don't want to get into too detail about why I don't think he is, but primarily it's because the prosecution has stated in front of a judge they believe there are other actors involved. And I think they just can't prove beyond a reasonable doubt who that other actor or actors are. And I've gone over ad nauseum on my channel the different reasons why they could potentially think other people are involved. You got to remember there's things that they know that we don't know. I don't want to go down the whole Kagan Klein rabbit hole again. It's so strange to me that the girls would be communicating with somebody who's now a convicted pedophile within 24 hours of this crime and have some other convicted pedophile meet them and then do this to them. That could it happen? Sure. It just, can you imagine the odds? Talk about an unlucky day. Not only do you have one sick pervert that's a proven sick pervert catfishing you using multiple accounts, God knows what else, that has some disturbing things on his own devices that they find. But within 24 hours of that, like some other random dude attempts to abduct and brutally slains two girls. Like I said, talk about just horrible coincidences if it is one. So, there's that, and there's a whole bunch of other reasons why I find it. And I'm not saying that there was necessarily somebody else at the crime scene that day if it was Allen helping him or things of that nature. I'm not ruling it out either. But I think if that's the case, it's more of in the capacity that this was somebody who facilitated this crime or gave him access to, knowingly or unknowingly, access to these girls somehow. The fact that, one of the eyewitnesses said that, he was walking with a sense of purpose when he went past them. The fact that she remembered that specific detail, almost, like he knew he had to be there at a specific time, at a specific place. He parks his car so far away from the place. That's kind of suspicious too when there's a regular parking area closer by. So there's all sorts of reasons why I think there could be more than one person involved. And Tobe Lesenby in past interviews has stated, just matter of factly, when asked, could there be more than one person involved, and he stated almost word for word, we go back and forth on that. So I think they probably think there's likely somebody else who helped in this crime in some capacity. What capacity or how many, who knows? The thing that really disturbs me, though, is that we know from the FBI interview, or the state police, interview of Kagan Klein, that, again, they're very adamant in that interview that because of the wording used, the vernacular, that he wasn't the only one who had been logging into that Anthony Schatz account. And we also know there's other accounts and things that we don't even know about that he was using. So who knows what else people or him had access to. But I find it telling, again, that multiple people were logging into that account. And let's just hypothetically say that Kagan Klein, okay, let's just hypothetically say that he wasn't involved in this crime in any way. He just did the CSAM stuff only and got in trouble for that. The FBI or the Indiana State Police still know somebody else was accessing that account. They just can't prove who it was. Okay? So think about that. They could still be actively investigating somebody else, whether it's Tony Klein in his house, somebody else, for having been involved in just CSAM stuff, whether it's involved with Abby and Libby case or not. And I hope they've vetted all that too, because it was their opinion during that interview, clear as day, that they stated to him, hey, somebody else was using that account besides you. How? When? That's something only investigators know, and I'm fascinated to see. Let's see some other ones here. Wendy N., I agree with you. The thing is, I can't get over is why Richard Allen go to the bridge with a gun, a knife, and a rope. Just the intent to, just the intent to SA. Not sure. I'm trying to see what SA means. Do we know for a fact that there was, rope that was used in any capacity there, et cetera, et cetera? I've scanned through the entire document that the defense filed, but the problem is, proving that Bridge Guy is him. And I still wonder if they're going to use any kind of audio expert to try and compare his voice, or if they may have more audio we don't know about on that tape that Abby and Libby took, or that Libby took. They may have more audio that they can compare to his voice. We don't know. Let's hope that they do, because all of these things collectively, I think if enough of them add up, that he's got a problem. So I'm cautious, but at the same time, I'm fairly confident that we're going to find out there's probably a little bit more that the prosecution has that we realize. The prosecution usually will respond to the defense with a filing of their own when somebody files a motion like the defense did, or, their version of events like they did in these documents. The prosecution, has the right to and will file a response, I'm sure, to what the defense alleges. And, whether some of the detectives or investigators watch my channel, somebody else's channel, I hope I'm spurring creative thought in your mind as to reasons why some of this might be complete bullshit. I, as a prosecutor, would want some of these questions seriously answered. Like, come on, who's doing rituals in a broad daylight? I mean, what proof do you have of that? And, what evidence do you have that links, cell phone data, anything that links any of these people you mentioned and the defense mentioned in their filing to that crime scene? And the other thing that bothers me, one of the people that was named in that document, obviously he had Odinism and tattoos of that sort of thing on his body, things on his page. But at the same time, I just, I saw so many people saying, okay, one of the guys who was in that document is Bridge Guy. You know, he looks like Bridge Guy, blah, blah, blah. And then I go on the guy's Facebook page, and 2 days after the crime, he's got a picture of himself, and he has a beard that's so friggin' big. And I'm talking like down to here, okay? And around here. And there's no way that somebody that's got a beard like that is the guy in her video on the bridge. It's just not possible. Even with a mask on, there was so much hair on the guy that day that there's no way he's Bridge Guy. Okay? And I want people to realize that that's something I want and looked at myself. You can go and look at yourself and decide for yourself. You've seen the footage of Bridge Guy, even though you can't make out his face. You can see the dude. You can see his skin tone up here. You can see all of it. There's no way he's got a massive beard. So if that person that the defense is alleging was involved, even if they're right and that person was involved in some ritual, he wasn't Bridge Guy. So just something to keep in mind. That's another thing. Okay, what else do we have up here? I bet there will be no cameras inside. Shane said, you know, Indiana is a very, very right-wing state, and that's fine. I'm not passing judgment for or against that. But, you know, judges that have those political beliefs leaning, they tend to kind of, I think, lean more toward letting the public see what's going on and having kind of transparency in the things going on out there. So I don't know. I wouldn't rule out there being cameras allowed, possibly, especially given the fact that Alan is the one who's requesting it. But the judge will also have to juxtapose that against the fact that, well, you know, is it fair to the family to have this spectacle shown to the entire nation and some of these theories that may be just crazy or maybe slandering people's names who weren't involved in the crime? I mean, I don't know. But I'll be interested to see. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm right. We don't know until it happens. What else do we have? Shane Constantine. Yeah, BTK did that. He was obsessed with the young girl, but he stalked for weeks, months before the family did. Alan stalk. It's possible. Here's another thought I had about that. Okay. Girls talk all the time, especially teenage girls, right? They talk about their plans. They talk amongst each other. You know, Libby, I think, was involved in softball. I think Abby was about to. They're out in public. They're out in town. They're in school. They could have been in a store. They could have been just walking down the street and say, hey, do you want to go to Highbridge this weekend? And it could be some random perverted dude standing down there that overhears that. He's like, well, shit, I know where Highbridge is. Maybe I'll just pop out there that day. It could be as simple as that. It could be as simple as these girls had discussed doing that on their day off, you know, days or a week before even, or say, hey, we got to go out to Highbridge sometime. And like you're talking about with BTK having projects and stalking people, maybe that's what he did. Maybe he said, okay. But, you know, I find it interesting that he would be out there, though, around the same time, right before the girls. That kind of discredits that theory a little bit to me, in that it almost, again, seemed like he knew that was the time he had to be out there, unless he just completely lucked out, which I find kind of hard to believe that that's the case, personally. You know what? We don't know, though. Shane, definition of actors and a participant in action or process. And Delphi, in my opinion, it's the process, not the action. Well, if they're involved in any way, they're going to go to jail for the same charge. If they find somebody that facilitated it, they're going to get the same charge as, you know, Richard Allen. It's just how Indiana is. If you participate in any way in a crime that leads to the death of somebody like that, you know, it's going to be murder charges. So, you know, kind of splitting hairs there a little bit. Aaron, is it true the motion says Becky is the one who tipped Holder in a few weeks after the murders? Why do you think she did that, especially since she says the families had no knowledge of the scene? Look, there were countless people who were contacting the families after the crime, including myself one time when I thought I had a POI. You know, this person did it. Check out this person's page. Check out this person's page. And use caution there, too. That's the defense cherry picking one instance of somebody that Becky Patty probably told law enforcement about. Somebody may have said, hey, Becky, you need to look at this guy's page. You know, he posted some real weird things, or, you know, things that just kind of, whatever the reason was for it. And I'm sure she's turned in a ton of tips that people have sent to her, because, you know, If it were you, wouldn't you do the same thing? If somebody starts emailing you and says, "Hey, check this guy out," or maybe you should look into this guy. She probably sent all kinds of different things and tips that other people would forward her to investigators and stuff like that. So, um, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Sorry, my phone's buzzing, and I've actually been waiting for a call, and I don't want to take a call in the middle of a live stream. Boy, I'll have to call them back. It actually wasn't as important as I thought it was. I thought it was my doctor's office about my gallbladder stuff, and it was actually the pharmacy trying to give me some like anti-nausea medication for some of the symptoms I've been having, but they're not too bad right now. Sorry to get sidetracked there, everybody. But Aaron, to your point, I really, really think that the Patties probably have turned in a ton of tips by law enforcement, and of course the defense is going to say, well, that she tipped them in. How would she know? Well, if you throw a dart at a dartboard enough times, it's going to hit the bullseye eventually. And I'm sure that, between her, Kelsey, Mike, people messaging them probably up the wazoo for 6 years, that they probably turned in hundreds of tips over to law enforcement. So that would be my response to that, Aaron. With this report from the defense, I am leaning toward Ron Logan being involved, Mark Craven. It's an interesting, nobody's ever been able to definitively prove any of that, but, there's ways to explain away almost everything they brought up with his involvement to this point. I don't believe they really mention him in their theory. So whatever evidence they have can't be that much. Otherwise, the defense probably would have taken the Logan theory and just ran with that. Because especially since the FBI initially said that, but that's not the path they chose. That's not the path they chose, is it? They chose the Odinism path, or the Odinist path. So again, Shane Constantine. Remember in Kagan's interview, law enforcement brought up a convo on the Emily Ann account with an older male asking what age you girls have, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, and it was a creepily around what Richard Allen's age would have been, or what his own dad's age would have been. And, you don't know if he's just trying to use that as a cover, like, hey, if I get caught, I can blame it on my dad. Or if maybe he did know Richard Allen. The possibilities in this case are crazy. And again, the more we talk about this, the more you see how convoluted this case truly is at this point. And again, that's what Dr. Catherine Ramsland told me. She says in her initial email back to me that she thinks that there will be a good case. It doesn't mean she believes it's going to happen. A good case for possible reasonable doubt. And that kind of scared me a little, that you have this world-renowned forensic psychologist stating those things so matter-of-factly that she thinks that the investigation was pretty crappy from the outset. So let's hope that they have more from the search of his home, if it is in fact him. Because again, like she said, we don't want to have confirmation bias lead our theories. We want the facts to lead our theories, which is what we're all trying to do, obviously. What else do we have here? But yeah, and again, Shane, he had the Emily Ann account, so much going on there that I don't even think law enforcement can get to the bottom of yet. It's crazy. Margaret says prosecution is in a pickle. The witness saw a stranger all in black. 2019 introduced new direction. It was a new sketch, a killer and participator. But Carter maintained responsible killer was in blue. And yeah, that's probably because they have pretty good evidence that the person who was at least involved in their murders was that person in the blue, which is Bridge Guy. Again, they probably have more audio. They probably have more video from her phone that shows that they were attempted to be abducted by that person in the blue. And if you have, an eyewitness that says, yeah, that's what I saw. The guy passed me, whether he had a face, stuff on his face or not. And that's what I saw. Walk past me. Okay. And she has video and more audio that we don't know about of that being the guy that orders them down the hill with a weapon. At that point, it's pretty reasonable to believe that that's a person who was involved in their murders. So it may not be as big of a pickle as you think. Is it a potential pickle? Yes. But again, it might not be, when it's all laid out properly, as big of a pickle as we think it is. Jill says, I can't understand why anyone feels this crazy unprofessional doc filed by defense has any real credibility. It's smoke and mirrors. We, especially in the United States of America behind me, God bless this country. We do more things for charity and people than people give us credit for. But our culture is obsessed here with reality TV, true crime, glorifying things, and conspiracy theories in particular. People freaking love conspiracy theories, not just in America, but around the world. And, we all watch too many damn movies. Most things are not elaborate conspiracies. There may be multiple people involved, but most things are far simpler in the real world when it involves crime than people think. And, that's why, a large percentage of crimes that are committed, the first people they look at are family, because that's what the statistics and data show them. And I'm not going down a path of accusing family or anything like that. But there's reasons why things are investigated the way that they are. I don't know. Let's try and catch up on some more of these comments here. And I'll go for about another 15, 20 minutes maybe. Talking too much really dries my mouth out here. But yeah, the stranger in all black is interesting. We don't know if that's somebody misremembering somebody, but it kind of sounds clear from Nick McClelland's filing that the person that they saw was the same person. I think they're just described differently. So, if one person says it matches what I saw, a bridge guy, the other person initially says that was a person in black. I challenge you all later today. Go to the grocery store. You'll walk past 20, 30 people. When you get home, are you going to accurately and perfectly and flawlessly, other than the store employees who are in uniform, remember everything perfectly that person was wearing? Now, it may be that seeing the video of that person afterwards jogged that person's memory. And that's important, because if that person passed them and said, okay, that person was wearing what bridge guy, and like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's definitely the person I saw. You're going to have at least one eyewitness that's going to say, yes, that person in that video is the person I saw passing me. And there's just going to be little bits and pieces where you put the puzzle together to where it's going to be increasingly difficult for Richard Allen to, squirm his way out of being bridge guy, I think. And I'm not saying he did it, but I'm saying it's going to be a difficult time for him and his defense team to explain some things away when they start laying everything out in front of us. Shane Constantine said, yeah, BG has no beard 100%. Yeah, maybe some facial hair and fuzz. And, it freaked me out the other day. There was a version of the video that I watched for the first time a couple nights ago. And I sometimes I'll pause and I'll just, kind of just stare. And again, I don't want to go down the whole confirmation bias rabbit hole, but it was like the angle of it. I don't know what it was. It was the first time I was able to look at, like all around the nose and mouth and be like, and like really look at it and just like kind of close my eyes and open it back up and be like, okay, I can definitely see some features that could be Richard Allen there. But again, that's not something that holds up in a court of law. That's just my observation and opinion. Okay, what else do we have here? Yeah, Jill, the whole Odinist thing does seem kind of crazy. Even in light of, and again, I think that the defense really took some liberties, in my opinion, with what they found on some of these people's pages. Then people talk about, I saw somebody take screenshots of Elvis Fields, who was also alleged by the defense to have been involved in this Odinist ritual in broad daylight. And he posted like Elvis, he seems like he's, I don't know. I don't want to say it wrong. I don't know if he's developmentally disabled. I don't know if he has a, learning disability. I don't know what it is, but when he types, it's not real pretty. And he was pretty angry on his page that his name was listed in this thing. He says, I was doing this or I was doing that, and just basically tried to discredit everything the defense said in a couple of Facebook posts. And I wish I had screenshotted it. I need to go back and look. But there are, photos of on other people's pages of alleged screenshots of Elvis reacting to these things. And again, he has some problems with his wording, and I want to be real cautious not knowing him about how I portray that. But even though he's not the most well-spoken person, he came out and vehemently defended himself and posted a picture of a Bible on his page and said, I'm Christian. I've been Christian my whole life. Why would I participate in an Odinistic ritual during stuff like that? So you better believe that the prosecution is going to get somebody like that the defense alleges was involved on the stand and be like, hey, you know what? Have you ever been involved in this? And they're going to portray a completely different story and do everything they can to disrupt the defense's theory, which, again, the more we talk about it, which is why I like talking about it with all of you, the more it seems pretty far-fetched to me. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm saying that a lot of things would have had to happen for it to be a ritualistic crime in broad daylight by people that don't ritualistically typically sacrifice human beings, let alone human beings of their own race. That's not their MO. And the people who study the Odinists will tell you the same thing. And I even had a couple of Odinists that came on my page and said, this is horseshit. This is not how our religion behaves. And that's going to matter to a jury. It's going to matter a lot. So thanks for, the comments on some of that. I want to make sure I'm not skipping anybody's comments here. I heard a while back, Libby posted or took 16 or 19 photos on her Snapchat account on 13. They will tell a tale. Indeed. And that's pretty well documented that there are more photos. What do those photos show? We'll see. There's more, though. Let's see. Shane, I'm from Ireland, and kids hang out at pharmacies and stuff because of makeup and stuff. Do kids in America hang out at CVS stores? Yeah, it's just at any given time, you have teenagers wandering through things. Somebody will go in a store, buy a candy bar, and especially, where I live, just in the suburban areas of these big cities, that just keep expanding, and more and more people keep coming to our country. The population's booming. It's almost like an open border policy now. Just there's always people in these businesses all the time, and all it takes is one person overhearing something in public about where somebody's going to be, and you might not even realize you're giving out that information to somebody that just overhears you. And it's creepy because there's sick people out there everywhere. Peruvian 69. How much stock do the confessions carry? Believing Odin guards influence a confession is pretty far out there. Yeah, those are people, and without knowing them and without being there, even if you have people who have a certain religious belief, that doesn't automatically mean that they're going to try and frame somebody for a crime that's in jail. Those people would already have to have known that guy's going to be put in that jail. Again, why draw attention to yourself? Whether you're a prison guard that's an Odinist or something, why draw attention to yourself when you have the perfect patsy for your crime already, if in fact it was Odinism? I mean, you're just going to be like, okay, let's draw attention to ourselves, the real perpetrators of the crime, when somebody's already taken the fall for it. Who does that? Nobody. That's who, in my opinion. So Peruvian, yeah, I think the confessions are a big deal. I think Richard Allen is probably in a real difficult mental state, probably thinking that he would never be arrested. And then when that reality hit him after all those years, and that's the other thing Dr. Kathleen Ramsland said to me too. It's like in the email, it's like, and to other people, she said, I'm pretty sure that once this guy didn't get caught for the first week or so of the crime, he was pretty confident that he wasn't going to get caught. And, it just seems like ego ends up being what takes down a lot of these people. The fact that he came forward right away and said, yeah, I was at the crime scene that day. I mean, if it was him, he probably crapped his pants as soon as he saw footage of himself or even a still photo of himself on the bridge that day. Like, oh, crap, who else saw me? And who knows what's going through your mind after that. And, but it's kind of weird that he didn't throw his weapon out, though. He probably never thought that they could, even if he did that on purpose, probably never thought that they could potentially match extraction marks or just narcissism and ego gets so many criminals caught. It's what got BTK caught, because he thought that somebody else was going to get credit for a crime he committed. And so in the early 2000s, he started, and he hadn't done this before. He started kind of letting the newspapers know and writing them things and leaving clues like, hey, this was my crime, not yours. What the heck? And that ego got him caught. That narcissism got him caught. So yeah, especially when there's allegedly multiple confessions, whether they're legally admitted in court or not, I think is going to be a big factor. If, the prosecutor, if they're allowed to videotape conversations, I mean, that's probably going to be admitted as evidence. And that's probably going to matter. And I think it's probably going to bear more weight in light of all the other things the prosecution is going to bring forward. It's probably going to bear more weight than people think in a jury's mind. Rage Dunlap, I got a big pickle. Okay. Good one. I'll allow it. Congratulations. So that's just what was typed by him in the comments. Margaret, Jill, Doc could be smoke and mirrors, but that wouldn't show guilt for Richard Allen. What else do we have? Shane Constantine, old couple beneath the bridge claimed to have seen a younger man on their property in all black. Husband asked him to leave. Wonder, is it true? Again, any of that information, if you can, even if you come to my page at a later date or email me or anything, if you have proof that that really happened other than just internet rumor or hearsay, please share it with me, because stuff like that is golden. If you can find some sort of fairly definitive proof that that person was actually seen on their property in all black, even you in your comments say, wonder, is it true? I don't want to assume that it's true. Margaret Lee, what does state have? The witness did not point to Richard Allen. That is logical. Cell data needs to show what state believes. So why is state nervous? What makes you think the state is nervous? I mean, do you speak with Nick McClelland every day? Do you speak with the people who investigated this crime? I mean, what makes you think they're nervous? Other people might think they're nervous. They might be confident as hell in their case. They might be like, oh, look at this bullshit. And I'm not saying it is, but they might be like, look at this BS. Oh, I can't wait to file a response to this because we're going to blow this shit out of the water. We don't know until they file back. So I really hope that's made public too. And maybe the prosecution's going to want that made public, because maybe they're going to just blow all of those theories out of the water in their response. Jill says, Richard Allen is bridge guy. Libby's video shows that. He, by his own admission, was there dressed as the same. Yeah, the dressed similarly thing is interesting to me too. Plus the 3 girls who saw him, and he confessed. Again, without saying he's guilty, there is far more, whether it's circumstantial or physical evidence, far more physical and circumstantial evidence in this case right now to support the theory that Richard Allen was involved with this crime in some way than there is to support the defense's allegation that this was Odinists. And keep that in mind before just automatically jumping to conclusion that you believe everything the defense has filed, that even in their giant filing, even the fact they named names, they didn't provide any sort of physical evidence really that I saw that proves anyone else's involvement in that crime. So I just think there's more evidence that points to his guilt right now than doesn't, even with some reasonable doubt created, which is the defense's job. If you don't try to get things thrown out as a defense attorney, if you don't come up with alternate theories, you're going to get fired as a lawyer, whether they're far-fetched theories or not. You've got to come up with something to defend your client. This is the path they've chosen, for better or for worse. Shane says defense is in trouble if this is the best they can come up with. I could form a defense for Allen or Keegan. Strange they want down this road. And again, keep in mind, they may have more information that we don't know too. But yeah, they've got a tough road ahead of them. But boy, again, we've learned, and I want to be cautious. I've had one of the top forensic psychologists in the country this past week tell me that they think that there may be a case for reasonable doubt here. That person's not saying they don't think Richard Allen is involved, but that the defense is doing a good job of kind of stirring the pot in a lot of people's minds, if nothing else right now. This is why I try not to talk for more like an hour and 15. I quit smoking like 15 years ago, and still every once in a while, it's like, got to drink like a gallon of water. Like, what else do we have here? Mike S. Yeah, I agree, Joe. Plus, we have to remember Richard Allen wasn't arrested until 2 weeks after the search of his home. To me, that says something was processed over the 2 weeks that sealed the deal. Was it just the ballistic evidence, or was it other things they found in his home or dug up in his yard? That's the million-dollar question. That's the question we may actually get some answers to when the prosecution files their response to what the defense has had to say. Let's hope that we learn more from that. That's going to be one of the most telling documents we've had in this case by far, is what Nick McClelland has to say in response to this allegation by the defense. And, I hope that doesn't get sealed, but don't be surprised if that gets sealed and doesn't see the light of day until trial. It all depends what's in it. It all depends on whether or not a judge feels that that's something that should be for public consumption or could jeopardize anything. There's a million reasons why a judge can choose to want to keep things from the public. And then, you have, places like the murder sheet and other places that'll potentially just try and make filings to say this should be out in the public eye. People have a right to see this, and it's always at the end of the day up to a judge to decide. Let's see. I'll email you the live it was on with the Delphi local. She said she spoke to the couple beneath the bridge. I will always take claims with a bucket of salt. Yeah, and I don't know if I put my email back up on there or not. It's infinite, INFIN8. That's INFIN8 at hotmail.com if you want to send that to me. Richard Allen does have a lot of blue coats. Yeah, it seems to be pretty popular, though, out there. Like, I don't know, I walk into the store and I see all kinds of blue jackets and coats, et cetera, et cetera. I'd be, again, interested to see if anything that they found in his house, other than that ballistics, links him to the crime. Shane says, apologies for the million questions unsolved. Thank you. Yeah, I know. I tried to answer a lot of your questions, but that's what we're here for, as adults, to openly discuss this case, and hopefully to do it without it being a giant 3-ring circus like some of the channels that cover this case. I appreciate that so many of you here, and I've made that my page that way by design, to where we don't have insults flying through the chat. I don't know how many people I've blocked over the years, that, people blaming family members, this, that. It's like, you're all welcome to your theories, but we do so on my channel in a respectful manner with each other. We do so based on critical thinking, on things that are known to be fact as much as humanly possible, which is what I try to make my channel separate myself from other channels from. And I always told myself, if I ever did start this channel, that it would be from that perspective, from my experience as a journalist, from my experience covering cases and things like that, and just using fact-based evidence to draw our hypotheses and draw what our theories are. And so I thank all of you for, being so wonderful and respectful to each other. Even when you ask questions or things that just may seem silly, that's fine, as long as we're really using our brains here and being respectful to each other. So thank you for that. What else do we have? Didn't the prosecution file a response late yesterday afternoon? Yeah, I heard something about that too. I'll have to go on the Indiana, and you can do that too. You just look up Indiana online court docket, and it should just guide you on the way there to go and look up, and you type in Richard Allen or Richard M. Allen, and it'll show the charge, and it'll list a series of things. They're just generalities usually, but when things have been filed in court, they'll post them on that website, and you can see for yourself. And that's one of the things I'm going to do here after this stream, and see if there's been any other filings that we aren't aware of yet. When does the court case start? I believe it's in March. I keep going back and forth on that. And I try not to even give a definitive answer on that. I think it's listed like March 20 something on the website is what it was initially. I've seen it change a few times. And again, if there's any delays, it could change again. So, it's good to have a general idea, but I don't want to put too much stock in that until they actually get in a courtroom and start his trial. And we're sure, because we know that the defense has alleged that the prosecution hasn't given them all of their discovery yet. And somebody said, well, that's shady. That's shady. No, this is small town, rural Indiana, Carroll County. Okay. Everybody has to understand this. This isn't a county that has like a population of a zillion people. Okay. It's pretty rural Indiana, even though it's an hour and a half drive from the city of Chicago. You're not too far from Lafayette. There's only so much manpower, and it's not like they have 20 clerks working on just that paperwork all day. They have their regular daily responsibilities too, to where, they have to, do paperwork for a million other things, let alone copy every single document after note after note. And of course, if there's even one little tiny thing that hasn't happened yet, or that goes over, the defense is going to say, because that's their job, well, you haven't given us everything yet, to try and make the prosecution look bad in the public eye. But there could be very valid reasons why they haven't gotten to them yet as soon as they wanted to, because it's probably just a matter of sheer evidentiary volume. And we know, as from both sides have said, there's just massive amounts of evidence that has to be gone over in this case. And, here we are with the defense alleging the Odinism theory. I'm going to shut it down here in a few minutes just so everybody knows. Margaret says, Shane, thank you. Best law enforcement has shown Richard Allen as a potential person of interest. But her timeline shows a man in black could cross the bridge before the girls arrive. I don't think that's what it says in the filing. I don't think she says that she saw a man in black, but I don't think there was any statement from her stating that that person crossed the bridge and came back in that filing. Not just the witnesses, but he described himself as BG. Mike says, yeah, I'm trying to wrap my head around that fact too. And I've mentioned this, and before I go, this is probably my last point, and it's an important one. Now, obviously, his defense is going to be, well, I already came forward to law enforcement to tell them I was out there that day, so why would I come forward again? But remember, in 2019, Doug Carter, he goes on TV, he holds his big press conference, says we believe this person's at Delphi or from Delphi, has lived or worked there. And then he says, we are seeking the driver of a person that parked at the old CPS welfare building. Okay. Did he not come out and just very, very specifically, we are seeking information about the driver of a vehicle that parked at that building? Clear as freaking day. Okay. With a million cameras in front of his face. And damn well Richard Allen was watching that eventually, whether it's on replay, whether it's live. Why did he not come forward to law enforcement a second time after that when they reached out and said, hey, if you were innocent, wouldn't you come forward immediately and say, yeah, I parked at that CPS building that day, everybody. That's what I came forward initially and told the law enforcement officer. Please clear my name. I had nothing to do with that. I parked there that day. He knows he freaking parked there that day. By his own goddamn admission. Pardon my language. He knows. But did he bother coming forward at all when they requested information about that? No, he did not. And I think when this case goes to trial, that's going to be a huge circumstantial factor in rendering a verdict, whether it's for or against him potentially. I mean, just think about that. Everybody's going to say, well, maybe he was scared. He knew he could have come forward. They were like, if you know you're innocent and you know that you parked there that day, you come forward to law enforcement, especially when it involves, as a parent yourself, the murder of 2 teenage girls, and he had a daughter himself. You come forward and you tell them you were parked there that day. He did not. Ask yourself why. Okay? Ask yourself why. That's all I'm saying. Think about it. So, Shane said, thanks for the live, great content. I really appreciate that. Um, Chicken with Carolina Reaper hot sauce and slow cooker for the last 2 hours. I love hot sauce, and now with the gallbladder stuff that I got that acted up, I really had to take it easy on that. I have a bottle sitting right here. Look at this habanero pepper sauce. Okay, I like the spicy food too. I like not getting cut when I shave, especially when I pay for the expensive razors. And I've got some Gaviscon. This is good stuff if you ever have heartburn. Just sitting here by my computer. Thanks everybody for joining my live stream. Thanks, Margaret, for all your comments as well on here. Shane and Margaret, I know you're having some great discussion going back and forth. Charismatically clever, good one, peace. Thank you too. Hour and 20 minutes. Hope I provoked some thought in you guys, if nothing else. And I really, really am glad I had the chance to sit with you and break down some of these things and critically think about some of these things. It's wonderful to have an audience to share the deep thoughts that I have about this case with, and the years of investigating I've done of my own with it, and trying to sort through what's likely and what isn't likely. And again, I think Richard Allen, probable or reasonable doubt or not, is going to have some things to really, really answer to. And again, another one of them that I finished it off here with. Why didn't he come forward when they tried to ask, were you parked at the CPS building that day, when he knew that he was, by his own admission? So thanks, everybody. I appreciate you, and I'm going to shut it down now. And hopefully I'll be making some more live streams soon. I'm trying to produce a little bit more content for everybody. And someday, since I have a journalism background, I'm going to try and invest in some editing software, learn how to use it better. And I think it's really going to enhance the types of broadcasts and types of live streams that I can do. So again, thank you all for the support, and I appreciate you. And to the families of Libby and Abby, hang in there. We're all here for you, trying to sort out what's likely, what isn't, what's BS, in order to kind of give prosecutors, and even potentially defense, if it's an innocent person, the most likely scenarios about what happened, and kind of make them think about things and what's most likely and what isn't. So have a great day, everybody. Just a few more things on here. Twisting the words, meaning why. If you're confident in your beliefs of what Richard Allen saw, words in black, say he didn't cross first and unseen without the girls. Again, Margaret, I'm not trying to be rude to you before I go, but again, I'm putting the burden on you. If you're making a claim that a witness said something that I haven't seen them say, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. Where in the document have you seen that person said that the person in black crossed the bridge? I've never seen that in a document, is all I'm saying. And that if you're going to allege that that's how things really happened, you're going to have to provide proof of that. That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to be upset at you. I'm glad that you're on my page commenting a lot. I wanted to answer that one last question before I want. And again, Shane says the girl might be mistaken, and that's personally my belief. I think that's what it is. I tried to state that earlier in my live stream, that go out today, go to the store, wherever you go that has a large amount of people, walk past people in general, then try and remember the exact details of what everybody looked like. She may have been looking down at her cell phone, peeks up, sees that dark blue jacket. In her mind, she tries to remember later on, because she didn't think she'd have to remember that until later. I saw a guy in black or something, and in her mind, and maybe the light, the sun's hitting in a certain way, it looks like a darker color. People give inaccurate descriptions all the time, even when they see the same person. And this is something that has been shown repeatedly, time and time again, in law enforcement cases and court cases. It's a well-documented thing that does happen, unfortunately. And that's why it can be difficult. And that's why I'm concerned about the eyewitness aspect of this, potentially, to your point, Margaret. So thanks again, everybody. I'm shutting it down. Have a great week. Thanks again for joining me today.